Hi, I'm Maame Blue, author of the novels The Rest of You and Bad Love. I would say a defining moment or experience that significantly shaped me into becoming the writer I am today was probably my training as a psychotherapist many years ago. I was studying psychology as an undergrad, and I was always writing, but I was really interested in people. As it turns out, that's a deeper interest in characters, and which you will know from reading my work. But at the time, I was interested in people, and I went into psychotherapy, and I trained as a psychotherapist. And I would say that working one-on-one with people at times at their most vulnerable moments, so kind of open and honest, it was a privilege to be in that seat. And also what it's done is massively influenced the way in which I write people. You know, I feel like I come at it from a more human and empathetic place, and those are the characters that I kind of chase after as well, who are complex but impacted by their relationships with other people. Do I think writers must consistently aim to reach a spectacular emotional intellectual point to deeply resonate? No. It completely depends on what you're writing and who your audience is. If you want to write a character who is they are, what you see is what you get, they're kind of on the surface, and maybe the bigger point of the story is about what happens in the story and the plot and the narrative beyond, you know, how deep a feeling that character has, is just as significant for some readers as writing a deeply complex, difficult, flawed character who is constantly having internal struggles as they navigate the world that you've created for them. I think there doesn't have to be one rule for all. I would say as writers, as creatives, we are absolutely burdened with overlapping streams of consciousness and trying to kind of juggle all the ideas that we have in our heads all at once. I think it's important to pay attention to the feeling, I would say. That's what I've found to be helpful, is maybe I have all these ideas for different stories all at once, but there will be one that stands out, or one that maybe sparks a kind of more intense feeling. Even if that feeling is, oh no, I don't want to get close to that. I would say when a feeling like that comes about an idea you have, I would encourage you to go towards it rather than away from it, because it means there's something to tackle there, there's some depth there maybe, and something that actually, if you put your mind to it creatively, could really bring out an amazing, piece of work. That's my advice anyway. I would say as writers, as creatives, we are absolutely burdened with overlapping streams of consciousness and trying to kind of juggle all the ideas that we have in our heads all at once. I think it's important to pay attention to the feeling, I would say. That's what I've found to be helpful, is maybe I have all these ideas for different stories all at once, but there will be one that stands out, or one that maybe sparks a kind of more intense feeling. Even if that feeling is, oh no, I don't want to get close to that. I would say when a feeling like that comes about an idea you have, I would encourage you to go towards it rather than away from it, because it means there's something to tackle there, there's some depth there maybe, and something that actually, if you put your mind to it creatively, could really bring out an amazing, piece of work. That's my advice anyway. I would say indie publishing has absolutely reshaped the writing and publishing landscape for authors across their careers. even, there's like so many current examples. If you look at the Booker Prize, for example, major literary prize, right? If you look at who the winners are, a lot of them are published by independent publishers. Indie publishing has a way of, and a kind of luxury almost, of finding the stories that connect with people. And of course they still have to think about, what will be commercially successful, but not in the same way as a traditional publisher has to. I think an indie publisher can just fall in love with a story and figure out the journey for that book, and it doesn't have to be, this is going to be a bestseller. This is just going to be something that resonates with this group of people, and I think that's an important story to get out there. Indie publishers really take risks, and they are often working, with not enough resource, not enough time, but a great amount of curiosity and excitement for writing. And I always encourage people to think a lot about not just the book and the story you want to tell, but who is going to tell it the best for you. That's kind of how you find that meeting of the publisher and the writer, I think. From my experience as a writing coach, I would say, recurring gaps or challenges, it varies. It varies by genre, it varies by form. I would say that a recurring gap is more of a personal thing, which is about confidence. It's confidence, and when I say confidence, I mean personal confidence in your writing, but actually confidence in the story you're trying to tell. And that comes from really, really knowing your story well. Getting to that point in your crafting the story, in your writing the story, in your editing the story yourself, of being able to tell somebody, this is what the story is about. When you get to that point where you can talk about it, you can say, this is what this story is, this is what it's trying to do, that comes through in the writing. That means you've spent enough time with it. That means you have really thought about it. You've really considered what the characters are doing, why, X, where, what's happening when, and you understand it. And that can take some time. You can come up with an idea, and it just takes some time for you to actually understand the work that you've created. And that's okay, that's part of the process. But that would be kind of one of the things I always do tell new authors to think through, which is really, really, really understand your work. You should know it better than anybody else, because you are going to have to talk about it a lot if you want it to be out in the world. I think the question of AI generated content and how it is impacting the underpayment of writers. Unfortunately, writers have always been underpaid. The profession, the creative industry has always been undervalued, even though it is a thing that most everybody consumes. Whether you're talking about reading the paper, watching the news, to watching TV shows, films, to listening to the radio. If you are engaging in any kind of media, you are engaging with the creative industry. People are creating stories for you to learn about the world, or for you to learn about yourself, or for you to learn about something completely different. And it has always, unfortunately, been undervalued. And I think in the current climate, my advice, my encouragement to writers in trying to deal with now this new evolving AI generated stuff is to allow yourself to be dynamic, I would say, and figure out how in your own way to become a bit of a multitasker, which is, you can't do one thing anymore as a writer. You can be a writer and maybe probably there's some other profession you're doing and something else. Is there other ways that you can use your writing ability, your creative ability, your planning ability to help you generate other sources of income? so that you can still enjoy the writing process, and it doesn't become a point of stress, because unfortunately the landscape is changing, whether we want it to or not. I think in order to keep the quality of writing content alive and not overtaken by this kind of generic idea of AI, we have to continue writing. In order to continue writing, we need to be able to make an income in some way. And so I think you have to be dynamic and you have to be a multitasker. You don't have to be the best at all the other things, but you just have to be good enough so that you can keep writing. My novel was inspired by many things, The Rest of You. It was essentially, I started with just this idea of a young woman in a club on her birthday. She is surrounded by people, but she feels completely alone. And that is how the book opens. And I wanted to explore this internal sense of loneliness when you have such gaps in your history. And when I say history, that is family history, the kind of cultural history. It tells a story of Whitney. She, after having a triggering event happen with an ex, she gets some kind of body memory that triggers something in her. She feels something different in her body is changing and she doesn't know why. She is a masseuse, so she's very in touch with her body, but mentally things are out of whack. And so we follow her journey trying to discover what this truth is. And beside that, we go back to Ghana in the mid-90s and we follow the three women that raised Whitney as a baby in Ghana and the decisions that they make after something huge happens, and how that has reverberations on Whitney's life much later as an adult. So we're kind of seeing these two timelines coincide. And it's all about it's about migrant journeys, it's about relationships, familial ones, it's about relationship with self, and it's also about how we navigate those gaps when you are in a diaspora, but you don't know what the life of your parents or guardians before you came along. You don't have that information, and naturally it feeds some gaps in your sense of self. How do we navigate those gaps? And I just hope readers connect with this book. I've had some really great kind of comments and messages from readers about how it resonated with them across diasporas, whether it's the African diaspora, whether it was the Asian diaspora, just across the piece in terms of that idea of a gap especially when your parents are migrants. And I just hope it continues to connect with people. Finally, my best approach to navigating a successful career path as an emerging writer in today's world is kind of similar to the question about, navigating underpayment in the creative industry and facing off with this AI, the growth of AI, which is, I would say, be dynamic. Hone in on what your skills that you have and how you can use them to filter out into other areas in the writing world, whether that's teaching, whether that is running workshops, whether that's writing blogs, whether that's writing content, whether that's social media, whether you're copywriting, doing something in audio, storytelling. I think keep all doors open to you and be open to being kind of a multitasking, dynamic person, because that will help you sustain what is at the moment quite a volatile industry in the kind of creative industries, and ultimately let those things power you through, because those are the things that are going to help you to continue to write. And that's the main thing. As a writer in today's world, you have to keep writing, keep telling stories about what you see, keep showing people the world as it is, show them how they would want it to be, show them how it isn't, but I think the writer's job is to reflect what is around them, and it's important that you find ways to continue to do that, even if it means you're doing it on the side of other things that are, earning you income and keeping you going.